BMW Malaysia recently introduced two new variants to the G30 5 Series lineup, that being the 520i Luxury, which is in silver on mixed side, as well as the 530e M Sport, which I have to my left.
That's right, the 520i goes for 329,000 ringgit, which is identical to the 530e Sport, which in turn is 10,000 ringgit less than what we have here, the 530e M Sport at 339,000 ringgit. This is a rather classic look we have on the 520i in its luxury trim, where this is bright work in its traditional sense. There's chrome along the front bumper just above the daytime running lights, which is something the 530e Sport doesn't have. And rolling stock is comprised of 18-inch dual-tone wheels. Also part of the luxury line trim are these air breathers finished in chrome, which, as you can see, is quite a good match for the chrome window surrounds.
For me, the combination of the M Sport body kit, the gloss black window surrounds, the 19-inch gloss black wheels, plus this super sexy Sophisto grey paint is just the deal for me. This is the Matthew Tong spec and I absolutely love it. But I gotta mention one thing though, the wheels may look better if it's finished in a two-tone, something like the 520i Luxury line, but this gives it a more menacing look. So for those of you who like the all-black stealth look, this is the kind of car that you really want to be seen driving in. Moving to the back, I don't quite like how this eDrive badge sticks out. I mean, I can make do with just this, the 530e. I don't need that to, make a statement or anything. Let me know in the comments if you agree. And last but not least, the M Sport kit comes with this dual trapezoidal exhaust exits compared to the rounded units on the 520i Luxury. Although both cars come with this powered tailgate. Nice. When you step inside the car, objectively, the first thing you notice is that it's less swanky than the Mercedes-Benz E-Class. I mean, there's no floating conjoined screens or anything like that. You've got no 64 ambient color lighting, but I think this is charming in its own right. It's starting to show a little bit in terms of age, and the iDrive system is not the latest one you find, for example, in the G30 3 Series or even the updated 7 Series. But those are all going to be addressed in the facelift, which is probably going to be out in a year or two. But for now, I mean, you expect a little bit more, especially when you put down 300,000 ringgit in a premium car. But I think this over time will grow on you, plus the buttons make it all a bit more practical, I would say. Between the two cars that we have on test here, I much prefer the cabin of this 530e M Sport. Specifically this aluminium rhombical, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but aluminium rhombical trim. It goes around the cabin and also on the door cards, which is much nicer than the piano black trims that you find in mixed 520i. Now the problem with piano black is that it catches fingerprints and scratches and various other types of stains, which can look unsightly in the long run, but this is just nice. Plus, the seats are actually navy blue. Okay, so let's move on to some of the things that I really like about the car. Starting with this, the fully digital instrument cluster. This is standard on both cars. Of course, the gauge on the plug-in hybrid is different on the right side, and you've got the whole hybrid drive system and whatnot, but it's standard on both. I like that it's super legible under the harshest light. It doesn't flicker and it's very accurate. So well done to BMW for that. The heat unit in the middle is also something that I am very fond of because it's very easy and intuitive to operate. You use this iDrive controller down here with a touchpad up top, but I'm left-handed, so I don't think that's going to be of much use. But in short, iDrive is still some of the best, if not the best, heat unit operating system in the business. Now, this also supports Apple CarPlay, and you've got to pair it manually via your phone. It's a little bit finicky, but once you get it to work, it should work flawlessly. But one thing I don't like though is if you want to charge your phone in the car, or you want to pair your phone for the first time using BMW Connected app, you've got to use this. So it's not a completely wire-free experience. You still got to use this, which is I mean I hope they fix this in facelift, but it should come with a wireless charging tray. I mean, even the BMW Z4 or Z4 comes with it. It's just one more thing I have to worry about. And like many modern BMWs, you can also download the BMW Connected app and get access to stuff like your car's status to see whether your door is locked, whether the windows are up. And if you get the plug-in hybrid model, you get even more information such as your driving data, how much electric range you have left in your car, or what's the battery status like, or your charging status. Also, if you have an Apple Watch, you can even turn on the climate control in a pinch.
Over here in the 520i luxury line trim, what we have here, in addition to the piano black, you also get a luxury line specific wheel. Now, not only does it look different to the M Sport item, the wheel feels different as well. This is a thinner rim. We'll talk about this a little more in detail as we drive later. Now, over to the back seat. Now, here in the back seat of the G30, I've just come from the front seat, which is set to my driving position. I'm just about 6 feet tall, and over here in the back seat, I have more than adequate leg room. I have room to shuffle my feet back and forth a little bit. However, the rear seat back which I'm seated in could be a little upright compared to, let's say, the E-Class. However, it is still more than comfortable enough, perhaps for a stint of up to 2 hours, at which point your driver will probably want to take a break anyway. Now, creature comforts are still in abundance here. You have 4-zone air conditioning, vents at the base of the center console, and in the lower half of the B pillars as well. Headroom, more than adequate. I think you've got about a fist and a half. In terms of window shades, you have blinds for the main portion, as well as the side glass. In terms of accommodation for the slightly littler ones, there are ISOFIX mounting points in the outside rear seats. The 520i accommodates 530 litres of boot space. This is more than the 530e because there is no battery pack to contend with in the petrol-only 520i. However, the rear seats don't fold down, so if you need to carry oversized luggage, that's all you're gonna get. Now, let's go for a drive. From the driver's seat, we get control of 181 horsepower and 290 Newton meters of torque. What does that mean in actual usage? It is very competent and most of the time sufficient, as long as you aren't chasing hot hatches. In terms of engine note, it is more functional rather than emotive, but that's something we will all have to have gotten used to by now. In 5 Series tradition, this drives the rear wheels through an 8-speed ZF automatic gearbox, which most of the time, in fact just about all of the time, works flawlessly. Now, in terms of driver controls, the 520i here lacks paddle shifters behind the wheel. So if you do want to take manual control, the gear lever on the console will have to do.
I think we're living in an era where a lot of people are pretty much well acquainted with plug-in hybrid technology, and stuff like the sheer quietness of pure hybrid driving and instant throttle response. A lot of people really like that. And of course, who can forget the tax breaks when you buy a EEV certified car in Malaysia. I mean, everybody seems to love that. But anyway, I'll get down to the details. This car is powered by a B48 2-litre 4-cylinder engine that's turbocharged. So this is the exact same engine as you would find in the 520i Luxury, right down to the output. But where it differs is that this guy comes with an electric motor to help provide a little bit more juice. So the total combined output on paper is 252 horsepower and 420 Newton meters of torque. This is exactly the same horsepower as the 530i petrol-only mix, but this guy, the 530e, has 17 Newton meters more. And it doesn't actually translate to any real-world performance benefits, except, you get the benefits of a plug-in hybrid pure electric drive. But in terms of the 0 to 100 sprint, it's 6.2 seconds, so exactly the same as the 530i. Except if the battery goes dead, as with any normal plug-in hybrid car, you're not going to get 6.2 seconds, it's technically going to be slower. And as a comparison, the 520i does the 0 to 100 in about 7.8 seconds.
Now, with this being a non-electrified model, there are other basic stats which compare favorably against the 530e as well. This weighs just over 1600 kilograms compared to the 1845 kilograms of the plug-in hybrid. You also get a larger boot space, as we've covered, 530 liters versus the 410 liters in the hybrid, and you get 68 liters in fuel capacity versus 46 liters in the 530e. So of course, with a car that is seemingly more fleet of foot, lighter on its feet, this has a rated fuel consumption of 6.2 liters to every 100 km. Now, we have achieved an indicated 9.9 to 10 liters per 100 km, bearing in mind that this is with a very mixed urban usage, possibly more skewed towards being caught in traffic. And of course, once in a while, we're pushed for time, we get a hurry on, that drinks a bit more fuel as well. The 6.2 liters per 100 km of the 520i compares against the 2.3 liters as stated that is achieved by the 530e.
Speaking of pure electric driving, this car has a claimed electric range, pure EV range for that matter, of around 48 to 50 kilometers. But out in the real world, it probably gives you around 30 km to 32 kilometers of real pure electric zero emissions driving range. And the figure that you get here on the display once you charge up the car and from the information you can get from the BMW Connected app, it's pretty much accurate. When it says you get 30 km of range, you actually get 30 kilometers of driving range. So to get the battery to a full charge via a regular domestic socket, the standard 13 amp unit, takes around 4 to 4.5 hours, so about 25% battery charge for every hour that you charge. And if you live in a condo with no access to any of these charging stations or 13 amp port, then sorry, you're pretty much out of luck. And the only way you can charge the battery is if you put it into sport and then you do some really hard driving to regain or recuperate some of that energy from braking and engine drag. But that kind of defeats the whole purpose of a plug-in hybrid, doesn't it? So for those of you who are wondering, this car has a combined fuel consumption rating of around 2.3 liters per 100 kilometers. And out in the real world, I think I don't know if it's achievable at all if you're driving in hybrid mode, like you're doing city and highway driving at the same time. So what I managed to get is about 5 to 7 liters of fuel per 100 kilometer, which is a lot better than what Danny managed when he drove this particular car in Germany. But if your daily commute comprises of a lot of city driving and you have constant access to charging stations, then you can pretty much drive without using a single drop of fuel at all times. And if you're like me, I live in Shah Alam, I drive to PJ for work, probably use around a liter or two a day. Not too bad.
So we know that the 530e, being a hybrid, a plug-in hybrid at that, is the more fuel efficient. However, what are they like to drive? In my opinion, that 530e is actually pretty impressive because it carries the equivalent of 2 fully grown rugby players somewhere along its chassis, 200 kgs more than this, and yet it doesn't feel like it's carrying anything near as much a weight penalty. Having said that, the 520i does feel a little bit more at ease with itself in more challenging roads, rather more difficult road surfaces. We have the typical potholes, broken surfaces, and possible areas where we can tramline. It doesn't do that, but the 520i just feels fleeter of foot and more agile. Possibly the key contact point for the driver, the steering wheel. This is also different in the 520i in its luxury trim. It has its own steering wheel design, which features a slightly thinner wheel rim compared to that in the M Sport kitted 530e. Generally, we all like a slightly thinner rim such as the one here for maximizing whatever steering feel we can get However, I'm not so harsh on the fatter rimmed item in the M Sport because, ironically, even though it's a sport-oriented item, the fatter rim to me feels more at home in a relaxed environment where it also helps filter out more of whatever harshness that does make it into the cabin, which is, in the case of the 5 Series, very, very little. And of course, if you do get the chance to stretch the car's legs a bit, work the steering, you'll also want to work the transmission. And in that regard, the ZF 8-speed transmission that is so common in BMWs nowadays is just the business. You could leave it to its own devices, put it in comfort mode, it will be as smooth and as efficient as you could want. You could put it into sport, you could put it into manual override and call up the ratios yourself, and you could do so purely for your own pleasure. There's no need to, because you could leave it to its own calculations in sport mode. It almost feels as if it's reading your mind. You want to go faster, it kicks down just the right amount. You want to pull back, call up a more relaxed gear ratio, it does just that. Now, this 8-speed ZF automatic transmission is very similar to the unit that's being used in the 530e M Sport, the plug-in hybrid. Where it differs is the placement of the drive motor. The motor takes the place of the torque converter in the petrol-only 520i. So in the hybrid, that motor is placed before the gear ratio, so it has the full use of all 8 gear ratios in electric mode as well, which in practical terms, you can enjoy the electric motor, enjoy electric drive at speeds of just over 100 kilometers per hour. You could quite comfortably cruise along the highway purely in electric mode. Also, with the transmission in the 530e, because it also deals with electric drive, it may take some getting used to because of energy recuperation. When you take your foot off the throttle pedal, it will decelerate more than you might expect from a conventionally powered car such as this, the 520i, and it's a matter of just getting used to it. That is due to the energy recuperation that is happening as part of the electrified powertrain. And on the matter of energy recuperation, the 530 is actually pretty impressive in terms of brake feel, because there's so much going on in there. You have to regenerate energy, and yet brake feel is still very, very decent, along with outright braking power as well.
Interestingly, for suspension, the 530e M Sport does not come with the customary sports suspension, which I think is for good reason. I find the ride quality and the damping characteristics to be exceedingly good. Okay, it's unbelievable how well sorted this suspension tuning is. In fact, I can safely say that the 5 Series outclasses the Mercedes-Benz E-Class in this specific aspect, because the E-Class can sometimes feel crashy when you're driving over pockmarked roads or just the regular kampong roads. This guy, the 5 Series, just waltzes over them easy. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're driving on crappy roads or if you're blasting down the highway, the 5 Series, by default, is always very calm and collected. There's no nauseating suspension rebound when you drive over road humps, or it doesn't feel crashy when you run over a pothole of any sort, you know? It's constantly planted, it's always so poised, and I think the key word here is planted, all the time, at all speeds, 24/7. It's just that good. The suspension tuning on this thing is incredible. It's no wonder that Danny thinks that this is the best car in the world, the business athlete, he calls it. But I gotta point out one thing though, the 530e, when you go over a road hump, it feels like the rear end sinks down a little bit, especially when the rear axle goes over the speed hump, because of the placement of the battery, which is positioned over the rear axle. And because there's no suspension tuning of any sort, you certainly feel the rear end dip in a little bit more. So in terms of general finesse, when it comes to ride and handling, the 520i clearly has the upper hand here. But all that means is that the 530 has to be driven slightly slower when you go over a speed hump. That's pretty much it.
With this being the luxury line trimmed 520i, it rides marginally better than the 530e M Sport. However, it isn't by a very large margin because that M Sport model is already very impressive, even despite its 19-inch diameter wheels.
Now this G35 series still rides on BMW's CLAR platform or CLAR platform, right? And some of the most outstanding features that I can pick up on is, of course, ride, handling, and surprisingly, very surprisingly, refinement. I cannot remember for the life of me the last time I sat in a BMW car, apart from the 7 Series of course, that is this hushed, this quiet. So much so that you can barely hear the engine when you're driving very low speeds or when you're stuck in traffic and you're idling. You cannot hear the engine, and that is something of a strange sensation, especially when driving a BMW. I mean, it's supremely quiet. I mean, now I'm in electric mode, but when I get the engine started up, you don't hear anything, and that's pretty remarkable for a BMW, I have to say.
If you're buying into this segment of vehicle, which, let's face it, is quite a sum of money, you will be interested to know about its safety equipment, particularly active safety. Now, the 530e M Sport comes with autonomous emergency braking, which functions at speeds of up to 80 kilometers an hour. That is complemented by lane departure warning that will vibrate the steering wheel and not actually pull the vehicle back into lane for you. That is also joined by a blind spot warning system, which illuminates lights in the side rear view mirrors. Now, we think that in something as costly as even this, the 520i, should be equipped with at least autonomous emergency braking because, let's face it, in urban situations, there will be surprises in front of you, and we will need all the help we can get in avoiding incidents.
Alright, time to summarize. Yeah, so the 530e is a real good looker. It handles and rides beautifully, plus it has more than enough power for I think a lot of people out there, so there's really nothing to complain about, man.
Yeah, that's right. Now, with the 520i on the other hand, it does the comfort thing even better. It has 18-inch wheels, so the comfort factor may not be such a surprise compared to the 19-inch items on this M Sport kitted 530e. Now, there are some things in particular with the 520i which leave some to be desired, in specifics, the active safety suite. Now, it would be good to have at least autonomous emergency braking.
Yeah, well, having said that, Mick, which of the two would you pick?
They are so close, almost too close to call, Matt. For me, on the count of aesthetics, the M Sport swings it for me, in this case the 530e.
Okay, and why is that?
Because they are so well matched in terms of road holding, how they feel, tiny differences in how the powertrain of the electrified version interacts with the driver, but on the whole they are so close. The looks of the M Sport kit just swings it for me, and that is part of the desirability which counts so much for a luxury item such as these two cars. And the M Sport, for me, has that additional, slightly stronger draw when you park it up and you turn and take a look at the car.
Huh, well said. Okay, as for me, well, I choose, drum roll please, the 520i luxury line. I know, I've been calling this the Matthew Tong spec all day long. I love the color, I love the rims and all that. But at the end of the day, I'm a very simple man. I prefer plain old good driving actually. I'm not very hung up about the whole electric drivetrain, so the plug-in hybrid is not so much a pull factor for me. And to be honest with you, in my personal opinion, the plug-in hybrid has more parts to it, and with more parts, you've got more headaches in the long run, and I really don't want all that. So to put it plain and simple, I think the 520i luxury ticks all the right boxes for me. I mean, it's well spec'd, but the safety side of things can be improved. However, I mean, all things considered, that is really the car for me. It rides well, it's very comfortable, it looks good, and it sounds good. I mean, what more can I ask?
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This is our verdict. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. We'll see you in the next one.
Hey, I was supposed to say that. But thanks for watching, guys. See ya.